Today, we're going to be talking about being disabled. And I'm going to tell you a story about being alone. A 5 year old in a hospital alone. Welcome back to Wheels of Wisdom. I'm Larry. Let's get into the story. Year was around 1976, and I was just a young kid. Actually, I was only 6 years old and living with a disability. I have cerebral palsy. And I'm going to take you back to a memory of mine of being in a hospital. I believe the hospital was Detroit Receiving, in obviously Detroit, Michigan. I was there for a procedure. And I remember the feel of the room when I was in that hospital bed. I remember how it was old. The building was old, very old. The room was very cold. At the time, I seemed to have a roommate younger than me, was in a crib. And I remember how this one this one instance as I was laying in the bed, and it, I only recall this one time of actually seeing a nurse. Obviously there were nurses there and they were taking care of us, but in this one instance I remember how the nurse came in and she was fussing around, I mean, taking care of the other patient. And the patient happened to, well, let's just say the baby took the diaper off and tried to become Picasso with situations. And I remember telling, not that a 6 year old has a lot of advice, but at the time, I told the nurse, I said, well, you know, if that was me, not me, but you know, man, if that happened at my house, somebody would get a spanking. My younger brother would be getting a spanking for doing that. And I remember the nurse laughing, and that's just laughing, which at the time I thought it was giving her some sage advice at the age of 6, but looking back, not so much. So after that incident, I remember, I believe they took the patient out, or the patient was moved to another room. I don't remember what happened to it, but I do remember the time. It was around maybe late in the evening. I'd say about 5 or 6. To a 6 year old, late in the evening, 5 or 6 seemed late. I remember deciding, well, let's just see what happens if I get on the floor. I took myself and I crawled out of the bed. The floor was had the green tiles. It was cold, very cold, and I proceeded to crawl, because crawl. I crawled to the door, and nobody was there. And I decided to go outside of the door into the hallway. And I looked, and I remember that my room was put, or was closest. It seemed like it was at the farthest end of the hallway, next to the fire escape. The doors. You open up the doors, and you'd go down the steps. But I didn't do that. But I was just sitting on the floor in my hospital gown, mind you. For those of you that are in the know, you know, mm, little ventilation in the back door. You know what I'm saying? So I sat on that floor and looked down the hallway. And to me, the best way to describe it is, it felt like a scene out of the Twilight Zone where there was nobody around. It just seemed like I was the only one in this daggone hospital. I know now that wasn't the case, but then it was like, okay, this is weird. Nobody else is here. And I'm sitting on the floor, looking out my room, almost in the hallway, halfway in, halfway out. And I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of strange that nobody has said, hey, get back on the bed, or nobody has done anything. There's no commotion. It was like living, it was very strange. After that, I turned back around, proceeded to crawl myself back into my bed, or back into the room, and got into the bed. That was very weird. It wasn't the last time I'd be in a hospital room, but it's the first one I recall. I remember also how at the time my parent, I was in a home of a single parent, and the ability for that parent to traverse back and forth was not much of an option. My mom would only come when the surgery was going to take place. I just remember laying there in the bed and just remembering how, oh my goodness, this is very, 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 very lonely. So that was one of my recollections of the earliest memory of being in a hospital at the age of 6. And if you'd like to hear more about what happened after the surgery and what I had to endure for 6 months, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching. I appreciate you. This is Larry, and you've been watching Wheels of Wisdom. Have a good day.